Just by way of introduction, my name is Sue Bowerman, and I have been an Ayurveda doula since 1986. I originally trained with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's mother and baby program. And since then, I've been really fortunate to be practicing this Ayurveda doula all around the world, in North America, in Europe, in India, not in Africa, not in South America yet, but my colleague Anne Revington and I started AMI. It began in about 2000 with 11 mums who met in Canada, and then it became formal about, we've been teaching formally in the summers in the Canadian ashram of the Art of Living, this program, Ayurveda Mother and Infant, for the past 10 years, 11 years now. And we went online when COVID started. So this is a wonderful program, Ayurveda Mother and Infant, which has to do, as you know, with preconception, conception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and the first 2-3 years of the baby's life. And this lecture is, or this talk, or this interactive session is on the most exciting part, on birth. What always floors me is to look around at everybody and think, somebody's mother birthed this person. Somebody's mother went through an amazing time to give birth to this person. So, you know, congratulations to the mums, and thanks to the dads, without whom we wouldn't have babies. So let's get started then. First, before I share a PowerPoint, and I'm going to switch the PowerPoint off so you don't get bored, go back and forth from seeing me and seeing the PowerPoint, is just what exactly is birth? Birth in Ayurveda is called a Mahakalpa. That's a Sanskrit word. Maha means great, and Kalpa means time. So it's one of those great times in life, like death, like birth. And for the mother who's giving birth, that moment of giving birth and that time period of giving birth is also a Mahakalpa. It's a great time where all the forces of nature are opening this window to let a whole nother soul in through her body into in this world with its body. And according to Ayurveda, there are 3 particular times that a soul enters its body. One is at conception, the moment of conception. That's one possible time. One is the moment of birth. So those are the 2 ends of the extreme spectrum. And one is about 5 months pregnant. So those are 2 little interesting snippets of information about a Mahakalpa and about the moments of the soul entering the body. So let me share my screen with you. And baby, it's time. Baby, it's time. So what do you think? Do you think the mother determines when the baby is born, or do you think the baby determines when the baby is born? What do you think? Oh, you can write in the chat. I want to get rid of this. I can't see the chat. Yeah, maybe
the baby.
Yeah, exactly. The baby determines, because the baby sends the signals to the mother saying, I'm ready. I'm ready. I am ready. And when the baby sends that signal, then the hormones start coming from the mom's brain and the whole labor begins. So the baby determines the time. The baby knows when it's ready, and the baby sends the signal to the mom and says, I'm ready. I'm ready. So it's actually really not baby it's time, but mama it's time. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. When you see the word childbirth, labor, what is your immediate reaction? You put some word in the chat, just write in the chat. What do you think when you see that word? I'm having trouble, Lewis. Somehow it's not letting me, I can't get into the chat box. It's not letting me see the chat. Maybe you can read what's written in the chat if there is anything.
Okay, will do.
Is there anything written?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Well, look at the face on this woman who is giving birth, and the dad's there just coaching her, helping her through. So we think of childbirth, we think of labor. So it's called labor because it's a lot of work, isn't it?
They put here hard work, scary but beautiful, pain.
Beautiful. Yes, exactly. Meeting of two souls. I see something's coming up. Yeah. Hard work. Yes, it is. It is. And it's quite interesting that men and women have the deepest topics that they share amongst each other in the human race and their humanity is the women will talk about their childbirth. They'll talk about, the birth of their babies. And the men, if there's been a war in their lifetime, will talk about their experiences in war. These are very, very deep impressions, very, very strong. The strongest experiences that you will have in your life is giving birth to a baby and going to war and fighting for your country. So it's no wonder it's called labor. So then what happens? Baby, you're here. Baby, you're here. Finally, after wanting to have a baby and going through the pains of, losing babies partway through or not being able to get pregnant, particularly in this day and age, Ayurveda has some wonderful solutions for some of those problems. And then finally the pregnancy goes all the way through and the baby is born and baby, you're here. Wonderful moment and the family is started or added to. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about. They say a good talk always says what we're going to do, and then we'll do it, and then what did we do? So there are going to be 7 different stages in this talk. One is about readiness. One is the first stage of labor, which is the effacement and dilation of the cervix, which effacement just means a thinning, because the cervix is like a plug from the uterus to the vagina. So effacement is it thins, it gets very, very thin, and then dilation, it has to widen to 10 centimeters. So that's the first stage. And that's really the hardest part because that's the most painful part. For that cervix to dilate and for it to efface, it takes often a very long time, particularly for first-time mums. Second stage of labor, traveling through the birth canal. Third stage of labor, the delivery of the placenta. Fourth stage of labor, recovery. So that's 2 or 3 hours, 4 or 5 hours after giving birth. And then we'll have 2 demonstrations, how we massage the fontanelle and how we give the first taste of ghee in that very first hour of the baby being born. And then we'll have some questions. You can also put questions in the chat as we go along. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Now let's do it. So readiness is all. You see a picture of a curtain there. There's a little yellow curtain. So, to have a baby, there's a lot of things that go into it. The mother and the father have to be ready on many different levels, psychologically, mentally, to bring another person into this world and to look after the person and to take care and give them the best they can. And physical readiness, you have to be strong, you have to be ready for the birth, and you have to have the house ready, the room ready, the clothes ready, everything you need. And then spiritually ready, some people really value their independence and they don't want to give up their freedom and have to be tied down by looking after a child. So there's lots of different readinesses. So there's a yellow curtain there for a reason, because for my firstborn was Neil, who's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful boy who's now 33 years old. You know, the firstborn, you really don't know anything. You go through pregnancy, you haven't a clue what's going to happen in birth and pregnancy, and it's all a big surprise. And the one thing I wanted to be able to sit on the couch in the living room in my privacy and close the drapes, which were yellow, and be able to nurse my baby. But I didn't have any drapes, so I was making them. And it took a long time to make these drapes. And I was hand sewing and hemming them and everything. And my mother had come and, you know, the baby's room was ready, everything was ready, but the drapes weren't ready. And so my mom was helping me and I was sewing and sewing. And finally, about 7 o'clock at night, this night, the drapes were finally ready and we hung them up. And my mom said, well, you know, now that the drapes are ready, I bet the baby's going to come tonight. And sure enough, about 1 o'clock that night, the barometer changed. There was a beautiful moon out there and the contractions started in earnest. And sure enough, that was when my baby was born. So yes, readiness is all. So look at this picture, guys. What's happening here? Anybody know? Put it in the chat. You can put it in the chat. What's happening? Can you see? You can write to everybody or to me, whatever. Anybody know? No? Can you see her jeans are really, really wet? But she hasn't peed. It's not wee-wee. What is it? What is it? Nobody knows? Water breaking. Yes. Water breaking. So the baby sits in this sac, the amniotic sac, and there's lots of water inside because it's a cushion of protection. So, you know, if you're running to the bus and the baby's in there, it doesn't bang, bang, bang on your bones and everything. It's protected in this wonderful little cushion, the amniotic water. When the amniotic water breaks, you can imagine, first you've got the uterus, you've got the little tiny 1 cell becomes 2 cells, 4 cells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, then you start developing the spinal cord and blah, 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 blah. And you get a baby and it gets bigger, bigger, bigger. Then it starts kicking on your ribs and kicking everywhere and then taking up all the space, and you hardly have any space to digest because the stomach gets pushed and everything gets pushed away. So you can imagine after a certain point, this wonderful cushion of water, well, it kind of has no more room and it ruptures, it breaks at some point. And when that happens, well, then labor is pretty imminent. Labor is either the water breaks before labor starts or it breaks sometimes in labor. And sometimes, and Ayurveda says this is a very, very, what do they say? Very, very profound thing is when the baby actually is born with the sac completely intact. Actually, Ayurveda says that when that happens, that baby is a saint. So I was quite surprised that my son was born like that. But he's not a saint. He's a physicist. But he works looking at existential risk, what can cause the downfall of mankind 200, 500 years in the future, and tries to avert that. So in that way, yeah, you could say he's kind of a saint, looking after the welfare of us in the future. So let's get into the first stage of labor then. Here we go. Effacement and dilation. So you can see here, the baby is upside down and the top of the head is right there on top of the cervix. So what it's got to, you can see the cervix is quite thick in the first picture. The cervix is not effaced or dilated. So then the cervix starts to thin, that's effacing. And then it starts to dilate. And then it gets fully effaced and fully dilated, and the head gets engaged. So the head starts to get engaged between the bones. Now, if you reach up and hold onto your head, guys, just feel the front part of your head and feel the back part of your head. Everybody try it. So which is bigger, the back part of your head or the front part of your head? Which is bigger, guys? You can write in the chat. Yeah? Which is bigger?
Front?
The front part? You think the front part is bigger? Is it narrower? Feel the back part. The back part is wider, isn't it? The front part's a bit narrower. So if the back part of your head is wider, and you think about the bones, the hip bones here, and the cervix, and the hip bones of the mum, so which is wider, the front or the back by her spine, or the front? Which is wider? Look at my hands. Can you see my hands? It's the front, yeah. So the front is wider. So you want the back part of your head to be engaged with at the front of the mum's hip bones. So that means that the baby, when it's upside down and it comes out, it's looking behind you. That way, the widest part of the baby's head is in the widest part of the mum's hip bones. And that's why you want the baby to come out looking down, looking behind you. Now, and this happened with my son, if the widest part of the baby's head is actually in the narrowest part of the hips at the back, then the baby is coming out sunny side up, looking up at you. But it's terrible because the baby's spine is against your spine. And that's really painful. So if the baby is the normal way, engaged with the head fully engaged, looking to the back, then you have contractions which contract, and then there's a pause, and then contract, and there's a pause. But if the baby is sunny side up, then you have constant contractions and no rest and no pause from the pain. So, oh yeah, so there are ways to deal with that. Okay, so when you start having contractions about get the video ready, Lewis, having contractions about 3 minutes apart, then the first stage of labor is divided into 3 parts. One is sort of latent. That's when the cervix is dilating and effacing and the contractions are not that close together. And then there's active labor, when the contractions start being 3 minutes or more apart. That's active labor. So you can get to about 2, 3, 4, even 5 centimeters in latent labor. Even some women are that dilated before labor actually really kicks in. But then active labor, it really gets going. Now, we have a wonderful doctor in Brazil who thinks that you've got to relax instead of worrying. All the women, oh, I don't know, I can do labor, I'm so scared, is it going to be painful? Oh no, I'm going to labor. So he says, let's just dance. And Ayurveda does the same thing. Let's walk, let's dance, let's enjoy, let's move, because gravity is going to pull that baby down anyway. As soon as you start lying in a bed, gravity can't do its job. So let's move, let's dance, let's relax, let's have fun. You want to show the video, yes. Lewis? You can imagine being in labor and dancing. Woohoo! Thank you, Lewis. So let's go back here to our PowerPoint. So that's the dancing part of latent first stage. Once it starts getting pretty active, it might be hard to actually dance like that. But if you can stay upright, maybe grab onto a pole or be in water, someplace where gravity is helping you, that really helps. It helps to have the baby's head on the cervix, pushing down with gravity to help that cervix dilate. And that is the most painful part, getting that dilation to happen. And you've got to dilate to 10 centimeters. That's quite a bit, 10 centimeters. Okay, that was a dancing clip. So then we get into a second stage of labor. So this is where the baby is pushed through the birth canal. And this woman she is pushing. So at a certain point, the head gets engaged. It starts to, go a little bit into the cervix. I mean, past the entrance to the cervix, a little wee bit down, and then the body starts to bear down and push the baby through the birth canal. And this is actually very, very powerful as a woman to experience the power of your uterus to contract and to push. When you're just sort of watching the whole thing and the body is doing it, you go into your primitive brainstem, the reptilian brain, and just watch the power of your body do what it's meant to do. It's amazing. So here we were talking about head engagement, normal or sunny side up. So you can see when it is in a posterior position, or sunny side up, the baby's back is against the mom's spine. But then if we turn it around, then the widest part of the head is in the front of her hips, which is the widest part of her hip bones. So when the doctor or midwife or doula realizes that the baby might be sunny side up, there are things that you can do to rock and slightly disengage the head and to have it shift and rotate so that the head can go, the widest part of the head can be in the right place. And that's what happened to me with my firstborn. I had been in pushing in the second stage of labor for 4 hours, and my poor uterus the muscles of the uterus were getting really, really tired. And I had a wonderful doctor, Dr. Hughes. He said, "Sue, I have an idea." He had delivered lots of babies in the Indian reservations. And he said, "I've got an idea. This might hurt a bit, but bear with me." And he reached his hand in, his whole hand, actually 2 hands in, and he gently pushed the baby's head up out of engagement and gently turned it around. Now, you have to be very careful that the cord doesn't wrap around the neck or something, but he gently shifted the baby around. And as soon as my son's widest part of his head was in the widest part of my hips, just one contraction, boom, he was out. So it really does help to be in the right position. So then you go through the passage of the birth canal. You can see here's the cervix. Then there's some twists and turns that the baby has to go through. And then there's a rotation of the head. Now, in Ayurveda, what we do is in the lead up, the last months of pregnancy, in the lead up to the point of birth, there are things you can do to the perineum. You massage the perineum with sesame oil, and you can stretch out the opening of the vagina so that it gets used to getting a little bit bigger. Because when the baby's head then gets through the birth canal and starts to be at the opening of the vagina, the whole perineum gets like 1 cell thick. It's transparent, and you can see the hair of the baby. But then it's got to widen. So you first have to get through, the baby's first got to get through the cervix, through the birth canal, and then it's got to get through the opening of the vagina. And you'll see the hair coming, and then you'll see with the contraction it gets bigger, and then So with every contraction, the head comes out more and more and more until finally the whole head comes out. And that's called the ring of fire because it burns like crazy to have the opening of the vagina stretching like that. And also the baby's head pushes the anus back like a flower. So the anus pops out like it's a little flower coming out, and the whole head just is making room for the whole head. It's quite amazing. Also, the tailbone is pushed back. That's why there's a sort of a rotation ability on the tailbone to kick back to make room for the head to come out. The body is so incredibly intelligent. It's wonderful. So then the baby crowns and the head comes out. That's the hardest part. Then one shoulder, then the other shoulder. And what Ayurveda says is that the moment the whole head emerges, that's considered the moment of birth. So the father usually is checking his watch, and at the moment that head comes out, fully out, that's the moment of birth for your horoscope or for your Indian astrology. So how much pressure occurs in the pushing stage? It's quite incredible. 397 pounds of pressure per square foot, or 2.8 pounds of pressure per square inch of the baby's head. And when the baby comes out through the birth canal, they look like they have a cone head. Can you see? Can you see that baby minutes after birth? It looks like it's got a cone head there. But then after 24 hours, it settles down because there are these fontanelles. So the bones have not, there are soft places where the plates of the bone, just like the plates on the earth, they haven't closed, and they can still move, which is really good because it allows them to get through this tiny birth canal. So the fontanelle is very sensitive. It's a huge thing, not only for the mom, but also for the baby to get through the birth canal. And the other beautiful thing is that going through the birth canal, the mother sends all of these antibodies on the surface of the wall of the uterus, of the wall of the vagina. So as a baby gets squished through it, all of his skin gets covered with these wonderful immune strengthening substances just by virtue of being in touch with the birth canal. And now that they're realizing that, for cesarean births, they're actually swabbing the lining of the birth canal and then putting that swab on the baby when they're born cesarean, which is nice. So the baby doesn't lose out on getting those good immune strengthening substances. Now, when the baby comes out, it's covered in what's called Vernix. It's a waxy, protective, very slippery covering. And you can see the Vernix on this baby who's just been born. And that is really helpful for getting through the birth canal. I mean, everybody knows you slip on banana skins, right? So if you've got a baby all covered in this wax, and it can slip out nicely. And the baby's got these reflexes as soon as it's born. So one of the reflexes is like a monkey baby. It grabs. So if you put the finger there and the baby's hand, it'll grab the finger. It's just a grabbing reflex for survival. That's one of the things. And the other thing is if you take the baby and you put the feet on the mom's belly, the baby will start walking. Now, of course, after a bit of time, this reflex goes away, but it's another very beautiful survival reflex in a newborn. So you can see this baby still has the umbilical cord attached. It still has Vernix covering its body, and it's just come out of the birth canal. So then here's what Ayurveda says is really, really, really important. You can see on the left, the umbilical cord still has lots of blood in it. And but it used to be that the doctors would immediately cut the umbilical cord. But now we're learning that, and this is also what Ayurveda says, that we don't cut the umbilical cord straight away. We let the umbilical cord drain the blood, and because there's still 1/3 of the baby's total blood is in that umbilical cord. So you let it drain into the baby, and then it gets, the oxygen from that, because it hasn't, hasn't started. Maybe it's taken its first breath, maybe it hasn't yet. The iron, the antibodies, the stem cells. Isn't that cool? There's stem cells in the blood that's in the umbilical cord. So you wait for that all to be transferred, for the cord to stop pulsing, because it pulses. When it stops pulses, and all of that blood is drained back into the baby, and then you can see on the right, the umbilical cord is white, then you can cut it. So then immediately the baby comes out, and it wants skin to skin contact, doesn't it? I mean, everybody wants, here you've been waiting 9 months for your beautiful baby, and you just want to hold it. And the baby's been hearing your voices, and it wants to see, who is this? Who is this? So the first thing, the baby looks up and it sees who's been talking to me, and makes eye contact with you. And it wants to feel that skin to skin contact. And it's really beautiful, because also from the mother's outer skin, there's an exchange of antibodies. So the baby is strengthening its immune system that way as well. So here are some birth reflexes. And you can see that the baby comes out, then there's a relaxation. You sort of, whoa, where am I? What happened to me? And then it starts to move. It can move freely now. It's not inside the womb anymore. And then it starts crawling. Even just after being born, it still has the reflex to crawl. And then it starts rooting. So it starts rooting. It finds the nipple, and it starts suckling. And then everybody is tired and everybody falls asleep. And even though the milk hasn't come in yet, there is a substance called the colostrum, which is again filled with antibodies and filled with nutrients, and is very, very good for the baby. And the baby starting to suckle will begin stimulating the production of milk, as well as all the hormones being released. So when you breastfeed, you have the pituitary gland, you have the sensory stimuli from the nipples, you have prolactin, oxytocin, you have all of these chemicals which are creating wonderful bonding feelings. And also, believe it or not, in the father, even though the father isn't nursing, the father's proximity with the baby, they've measured that his prolactin goes up, and he wants to protect, he wants to provide, he wants to nourish. It's very, very beautiful. So the whole family unit gets bonded with this. And then the baby's born, but there's still 2 more stages of labor. The 3rd stage of labor is when the mom still has to deliver the placenta. So, and the beautiful thing is that by suckling, by suckling, that stimulates the contraction of the uterus to push out the placenta as one whole piece. So it closes the blood vessels so that it can detach fully and properly, and then the contractions can release the whole placenta. It's beautifully choreographed, this orchestration of birth. And one of the things that Ayurveda suggests is you can save the placenta, and then you can actually plant a tree with the placenta at the bottom of the hole in honor of the baby with his placenta. And then you get to the 4th stage of delivery, which is recovery. So the baby is tired, the mama is tired, they've been through a lot, and now it's time to do some recovery. So there are some interesting Ayurveda aspects to this, is that traditionally Ayurveda did not have the father in the room while the mother is laboring. And that is because the mother he can actually slow down labor. If there's any tension between them, or if he tries to control what's happening and interferes, then it can slow down her labor. So traditionally, the dads were not part, and it was just a women's affair. However, in this day and age, if, as we've talked about readiness, if they've really, the mother and father have really worked through their relationship, they're very conscious of the patterns and things, and they're between them of communication and everything, and he's very supportive, then he can actually be a big help to the mother and help hold her at the back so that she can stay in that upright position, so that gravity is helping, and he can help massage her lower back and everything. And of course, he wants to be there for the moment of the birth as well. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Now, the moment of birth. So the moment of birth, also there is a sound associated with that particular moment of birth, with the alignment of the stars and the planets and everything. There's a sound that is maximally supportive for that baby. If the baby's sound at that particular moment is Ju, then you could call the baby Julia, for example. Or if the baby's sound at that particular, if the Ayurveda sound of those planets and everything is Ni, then the baby's name could be Neil. So it gives you a syllable, and then you can choose a name that starts with that first, part of the syllable, that is supportive, maximally supportive. When they hear that sound, that corresponds completely to them and the moment of their birth and the alignment of the planets and all of that. And then it's really important to keep the lights low, because the baby has been inside the womb and it's been dark inside there. So when the baby's born, it's nice to have the lights be low and to have it be quiet. No hysterical screaming or, changing of the guards or 21 gun salutes or anything. And that's a beautiful, gentle environment, because it's a very, very delicate time, the moment of birth. And we want to honor that. So let's see what it says. As soon as the baby is born, okay, yeah, we're going to talk about that. So at that moment of birth is what determines their Jyotish, or their horoscope for life. And that's why it's important to notice exactly when the full head comes out, because that's the moment of birth. Also to not panic about not having enough milk, because milk is produced on demand. So the more the baby suckles, the more milk will be produced. So don't worry about that. And then there are some beautiful traditions from Ayurveda that we can do. But the main thing is to rest well, mother and infant. The baby's been born and the cord is cut. And some people these days don't cut the cord, and there's this thing called, I forget what it's called, where they keep the placenta still attached to the umbilical cord, because the umbilical cord, even though you cut it, it has to dry up, and it takes about 10 days for it turns black and it dries up, and then it falls off. So some people these days keep the placenta attached, but I don't know anything about that from the standpoint of Ayurveda. Okay, so let's get to the beautiful things that we can do. There are three things. One is you can whisper into the baby's ear a beautiful sound that wakes up the consciousness of that baby. It's a beautiful, beautiful tradition. And generally, the father does that. If he's there, he just whispers very gently into the baby's ear. Otherwise, you can wait till the baby comes up near the mom, and the mom can do it. but the father is right there as soon as the baby's born, and it's really nice for him to have that lovely opportunity for the baby to meet the father's voice who's been hearing, and to have the father whisper that word that wakes up the baby's consciousness and intelligence. So that's one thing. And then there's another thing where you massage the top fontanelle with just a drop of cured warm sesame oil. And I'll demonstrate this in a second. And then the other thing is that the baby gets the very first taste, and that first taste is of ghee or clarified butter. So the mother or father, make sure your nails are really short, and you just, I'll demonstrate that in a second. So then these are the products for the demonstrations: is ghee, clarified butter. Sri Sri Tattva has got a lovely product of ghee coming from the Indian ashram, where the milk there is, you know about type A and type B proteins. Well, anyway, some people who are milk intolerant find that the milk that comes from Charolais cows or Jersey cows or water buffalo is not intolerant to them, because actually it has a different type of protein. There's a type A, type A, type B, or type 1, type 2. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But these
A2.
particular, what is it?
A2.
A2, yeah, A2, that's it, A2 protein, yeah. There was a letter and a number, it's A2, yeah. And it's much easier to digest. And the wonderful thing about this ghee is that it's made from cows with that A2 protein. And here's the sesame oil, which should always be cold pressed and organic sesame oil, you know, because you're going to put it on the skin and the skin absorbs it. And you wouldn't want to put anything on your skin that you wouldn't want to eat yourself. So let me show you these demonstrations. I've got my little baby here. She's not newborn. She's got long hair, but anyway, you get the idea. So on the top of the head, right here, the plates, the skull plates, there's a separation and there's a soft spot. So what you do, you have your little ghee here, your little sesame oil here. You just put a drop into a little container like this, and then you reach in, you get a little bit on your fingers, and then you gently apply it to the fontanelle. And then with the palm of your hand, just very gently, you make round and round circles, just like that, only that, very short, very quick, on the fontanelle. And it's a beautiful, the first language of a baby is touch. So to have this lovely, gentle, soothing touch in the fontanelle after you've gone through the birth canal, which is such hard work, is very, very nice. And then the next thing is you have a wee bit of ghee, clarified butter. Make sure your finger is nice and clean. So you've got your ghee, you just put a little bit of ghee, wee tiny bit, coat your finger. You can't even see it, but it's coated there. And then the sucking response, you just stick it in the baby's mouth, and the sucking response will take it, and that's the baby's first taste, is lovely ghee. So those are our 2 demonstrations. That's the talk. Oops, don't fall down, baby. Don't fall down. Okay. And so up to any questions? So one question is, I have heard as soon as baby is born, applying something on the baby's body throughout their life, they will not have body hair. Is this true? No. I think the amount of body hair is really genetic. I've never heard that. And I've actually been massaging my kids since they were born. And yeah, I think their dad has got a lot of body hair, so they do. But the other thing is that after you've finished massaging the fontanelle, then what you want to do is you want to cover the head in silk. And then you rub in the Vernix, And then you wrap the baby in silk also. Silk is very protective. I mean, there's other things. This is just an intro talk to our sessions. But if you are interested more in, the details of Ayurveda birth, you can sign up for our course. What is the benefit of giving a taste of ghee and the head massage? Yeah, old wives' tale, yeah. So yeah, ghee, well, ghee is very, very amazing. It stimulates the digestive system. And you would think the opposite, because we're told that, the oils are going to coat the intestines and then you can't absorb anything. Well, ghee actually, it stimulates the digestive system, it stimulates the digestive hormones, and it gets the baby ready to digest the milk. And it's also, it has just the right kinds of fats that are used for the precursors of hormones. So the baby's hormones and baby's neurotransmitters to function very well. So it's and it's a tiny, tiny bit, but it's like giving baby the finest, the most subtle possible thing to eat first is ghee. And then the head massage. Well, like I said, the first language of a baby is touch. So how you touch the baby, whether you're gentle, whether you're rough, that communicates so much, whether you're fast, whether you're slow, whether you're jerky, whether you're calm, whether you're smooth, that communicates so much. And when you massage the fontanelle with the little sesame oil, the sesame oil, it penetrates into the cells of the skin more completely. And if you know anything about Ayurveda, the dhatus, the 7 dhatus, it penetrates into all the 7 tissues very completely. So it's beautiful, soothing, and it penetrates all the tissues. And then you can be taught how to give the baby massage, which, there's so many. That's a whole, I think Wanda's going to be talking about that in our next session, which is postpartum. You'll learn how to give the baby a massage and how to give yourself a massage, the mother massage. And I'll let her talk more about that, because it's very, very, very powerful. Just let me suffice it to say that in orphanages, they've gone into to babies who haven't had much touch, and they start giving them massages regularly, and their intelligence increases, their sociability increases, their self-worth increases. So many things happen with a massage every day. Even if you're giving it to yourself as a mother, it's so nourishing. And also, I mean, the breasts they've already gotten big, but they're going to fill with milk, they're going to get bigger, and it helps prevent stretch marks. There are many, many benefits. Sesame oil has got lots of calcium, so it can penetrate into the bones and help the baby's bones grow. There are many, many benefits, but I won't steal Wanda's thunder. I'll let her talk about all of that later. Are there any other questions?
Yes, here we have one. How do you know the Ayurveda sound of when the baby is born?
Well, that, my dear, is something that you've got to pay for. It is taught to you by an Ayurveda or Jyotish expert, Indian astrology expert, and it's determined by the position of the stars and the planets at that moment of birth. And you can pay for them you can call and pay for them to give you that sound. I mean, of course, you have some names in your mind that, I hope that, baby, what are you doing falling down? I hope that we can call our daughter Julia. I hope that we can call our son Alex or whatever, you know. So, and then you have to play with the sound. I mean, one of the sounds, they give you a first choice and a second choice. And one of the sounds for my daughter was poo. I thought, oh God, I can't I can't give my daughter the name poo. I mean, there's a Hawaiian name called Pulani. Oh no, what was it called? Pulani, something like that. But I thought, oh, she'll be terribly teased, but oh, poo. So yeah, you've got to use some common sense there. But yeah, fortunately, my daughter, one of the sounds was Jew, so we called her Julia. For quick labor, as per Ayurveda, is there any concoction we can drink for speed and easy delivery? Yes, there are. But once again, you'll have to sign up for our birth section of Ayurveda Mother and Infant AMI to do that. We're not going to give away all of our tricks for free, guys. Okay. Yeah, there are things, but you need to be under the care of a knowledgeable Ayurveda to help with some of these things, because it's very delicate. You don't want to speed up too much. You know, everything has its own time and space and the right time for everything. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Nope. Last questions? Going, gone. So we'll see you next time. I'm really glad you were here, and it was fun. It was really fun talking about these beautiful, beautiful ancient practices, the Mahakalpa, the great time. I'll just say that because it is a great time, it's a chance for the mother, after she's given birth, to completely reset all of her systems, circulatory, endocrine, digest, everything. All the systems can be reset, and she can actually go back to a more youthful state than before she got pregnant. Because without the right kind of care, you see a lot of women, they give birth and then they get feeling really, they look really old and tired, postpartum depression. But Wanda will talk about all of that. So we have the Ayurvedic care can make you totally rejuvenate. And it's 40 days for 40 years. So the birth as the first day, and then for the next 40 days, the care that she gets is so crucial to her next 40 years and to the baby's next 40 years. So I'm still in my Mahakalpa with my kids, because my kids aren't 40 yet. So, and you can see, quite rejuvenated, even though I'm almost 70 years old. So it works. It really works, these guys. It really does work. Okay. Bye. Bye. See you next month.
Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank